All right, thank you, everybody. We will call this finance meeting to order, the October 12th, 2021 finance meeting. It looks like I am here, Councilmember Carter and Watson appear to be here as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, great. We will go into personnel updates. Mr. Vodopich.
Thank you. We have 3 site assistants in the recreational program that are in the pre-employment process. The community services officer, we held interviews for 6 candidates. The Civil Service Commission certified the list on yesterday, October 11th, and the chief's interview of the top 3 will be the next step in the process. We have an administrative specialist 2 over in Public Works, Michelle Withers, that started on October 4th. The administrative specialist 3 position, again in Public Works operations. The internal recruitment closes tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I believe we have 1 applicant internally so far. The assistant planner / code enforcement, we've received 12 applications.
Oh, good.
The department has reviewed 9. 4 have been identified to participate in the first round of interviews, which again is scheduled for tomorrow, the 13th, as well. The associate planner has been posted externally with the first review scheduled for the 19th. And Melissa told me as of today, we don't have any applicants for that.
Wow.
The senior center aide / cook, again, no applicants. But I believe as Jenna had mentioned before, we reached out to Renton Technology, Bates, Pierce County Skills Center to ask for their assistance in aiding in that recruitment process. Garner some applicants through that process. The senior center dishwasher part-time, again, no applicants at this time. A youth sports official in the rec program, we have 1 candidate in the pre-employment process. And then 1 that is near and dear to my heart and a great relief yesterday, we were able to extend an offer and it was accepted for the HR manager position.
Wow.
So we had
Exciting.
20 applications.
That's very good.
I reviewed 11. 3 were identified to participate in interviews. 1 of them dropped out, so we did a round of 2 interviews. The mayor and I then did a second interview with the top candidate. The interview panel was quite extensive. 12 of us or something like that. So it's a very, very awkward position to be, on a Zoom call.
Yeah, I bet.
And, have 12 people staring at you while you answer the questions. So her name is Debbie Mills, M-I-L-L-S. She comes to us from the city of Aberdeen. She will start on November 3rd. Has a pre-planned vacation the end of October, so a little bit longer than 2 weeks. Extensive career in human resources, ranging from a payroll technician all the way up to a human resources department director, which she is at Aberdeen. Spent 10, 12 years in Issaquah, I believe, working her way up from the generalist position up to the manager position.
She's been around, huh?
Yeah. But a very, very experienced HR professional. I think she'll fit well in with us here at Bonney Lake. Brian, Chuck, myself, Sadie, Melissa, Jack Niehauser, 2 guild reps. So we had Brian Van Sickle from the department and Chris Blake.
Good idea.
Chris Blake from the AFSCME folks, and missing a few, but had quite the interview panel, and she was the top pick out of the 2 candidates. Okay. So looking forward to that.
She's moving up here, I assume.
She lives in Lacey.
Oh.
So, but my understanding is that she may be looking to move.
Good.
So
Excellent.
And then the late breaking news is one of our records clerk in the police department resigned effective immediately today due to personnel reasons. So
that's too bad.
And then, as we talked about, there's potential upcoming recruitments or vacancies due to retirements. Mark Nelson, our building inspector. Gave his notice that he's retiring on October 15th.
3 days from now?
That's Friday.
Can't wait to get started.
He didn't waste any time. So, he came out of retirement to come work for us, and so is retiring again.
Yep.
And then Scott Fielding, our plans examiner / building official, has given his notice to retire on December 2nd. I was just looking at his letter today, and he has 49 years of combined public service.
Wow.
You know, I've been here.
Yeah,
I've been here 14, and he's been here that entire time. I know he had a fire service background down in, an official down in Ordy. Quite an extensive career, and well-deserved retirement after a lengthy service to the public. And then, we've had a couple other individuals. I know we talked about before. They're eligible to retire and are kind of making rumblings about retiring. So this will not be the end of the retirements we're seeing. More retirements coming in the coming months, and likely after the new year.
I'm sure. Ken, I talked about it before. I knew it was coming.
So that is your personnel update.
Was there three up there on the third?
What's that?
Is there 3 people on the third floor now working up there? Are you down to 3 on the third floor?
We're doing better than that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing better than that. We're still moving forward.
All right. Thanks, John. We'll go over to item number 2, ExecuTime software. Jerry and Chuck.
So I don't know how we're going to tag time this. So I'll start, and then I'll tell you, Chuck, I guess, when you can talk. So Chuck, that's a tongue twister. Chuck knows the technical side. I know. Say Chuck and technology in the same sentence, and it just twists my tongue. Chuck knows the technology side better than I do. I'll tell you what I'm kind of looking for. So I went to Chuck and said, hey, when I first started, we didn't have any leave requests in the system. People would just automatically enter their leave requests on their timesheet. So they'd enter their time, their overtime, and leave requests all in one system. And so he accommodated my request to add a leave request to the system. However, now we have an overtime issue, in my opinion. It's an internal control issue because right now an employee could work and just automatically add overtime to their timesheet. Timesheets are approved by a supervisor. However, as we know, all supervisors are pretty busy. So we have a lot of timesheet issues. When I say we, Patty and I, when we review them, every time when we look at timesheets. So it'd be really nice to have a system and create a better internal control where an employee goes to put in an overtime request outside of the timesheet process. So if I work overtime today, let's say I'm not an exempt employee, here I'm going to be working till probably 7 o'clock tonight. I'm going to go in tomorrow morning and say I worked from 5 to 7 and here is why. That will then go to the supervisor and they'll say, oh yeah, we know Sherry went to the council meeting. She didn't really work, but she sat there and so we'll pay her and they'll approve it. And then if I put in for it tomorrow, they'll go, we didn't have a council meeting on Wednesday. We don't know why you're putting in for this. Denied. Whereas right now, they can just go in and add it to their timesheet every day if they wanted. And if the supervisor just went in and approved timesheets because they don't have time to look at them, they may not be seeing what's really happening or looking as closely as maybe they should. So Patty and I are spending a lot of time. Unfortunately, ExecuTime is about $40,000. To add. The upside is that they do have a time and attendance, which Chuck can talk more about. He actually, I believe, took the demonstration on the product, so he can tell you about all the cool things that I don't know about. And the other cool thing is once we transfer our software over to Munis, which is what we're probably going to be doing, it will be able to transfer with the Munis products. So, Chuck, did you want to kind of explain what else the system can do?
Sure. So basically, this is a complete and total replacement of our existing timesheet and time off systems in Eden. So right now, if you're requesting time off, or if you're doing your timesheet, you can go to our Eden website and fill out your information, and then it automatically generates emails to whoever's approving that particular time off, sick, vacation, whatever, or the timesheet, and they're separate approval queues. And that whole process is currently in Eden, and something that is part of the Eden software package. Eden is owned by Tyler. Tyler bought ExecuTime about 3 or 4 years ago. Tyler, they're out of Texas, they buy up other companies. They don't compete, they buy. They find the best of the market and they'll buy them. So ExecuTime basically is literally, there's two different modules. There's a full-on scheduling module, which we would not be purchasing or using. And there's the time and attendance module. This is a very similar but slightly different timesheet system, which could be either a duration-based time or clock in, clock out time. You can use time clocks. You can use, clocking in through a phone or through your computer, clock out, or that's one way of doing it. The other way is doing it through a duration. So I'm clocking 8 hours today, which is very similar to how union members put in their timesheet right now, 8 hours of work. They don't say they started at 8 and they. ExecuTime has that functionality, but that's not necessarily what we're looking at. It does also have everything that we currently do, leave requests. It can talk it in Eden can talk, and it will be able to say, you have X amount of your leave balance, so you can't request over a certain amount, or you can request it based on the parameters that we set up as in finance. It says, well, you can request, 5 hours over your balance, or whatever kind of rules you want to make. It's much more granular in how you want to really tone and fine-tune the timesheets and the leave requests. The main benefit of ExecuTime that Eden doesn't have, Munis doesn't have, and most large ERP programs have, is the ability to request overtime and comp time earned. So it would be a very similar, you go to the ExecuTime's website, you log in, and you say, I'm doing overtime tonight, or I'm told I'm having to do overtime tonight. And you can be very specific. You can say, well, this is because of a call out, or this is because of a project, an emergency project. You can be very granular, or you can be very open with what that request is. But the issue that we found is the only way to be able to have a request and approval system for overtime is something like ExecuTime or its competitors. There are a few competitors in this space, but ExecuTime, being owned by Tyler, integrates very heavily with all the Tyler products. So this, we basically would set up a link to Eden, so all your information as an employee is in ExecuTime, and then when all the approvals are done in ExecuTime, so there's quite a bit of change going on here if we went with something like this. It's going to be different website, different for the approver, different for the employee. But it's also all web-based. It's all, whether you're doing a phone, a tablet, computer, doesn't matter. It's all going to be living in the cloud. It would be hosted, still tied into our Eden systems, but it would not be another application that we necessarily have to house and keep and make sure that it's running in-house. It could be hosted by Tyler. We could do it in-house. I would push to the cloud-based version. But really, if the issue is looking for how to solve the issue about overtime and accurately having overtime being entered into a timesheet, the only way to do that is through an approval process, and the only approval process for earning time is something like ExecuTime. That was a whole lot of information that kind of big shotgun system, right? Blast across everything.
I've looked at it on our portal, but obviously we can't do anything. So you just log in?
Well, this was years ago. I don't know if it's the same.
Hasn't changed much.
Okay. So yeah, you go into the website, you fill out your timesheet essentially right now, and you put in for your however many hours you worked and what your normal shift is or whatever. Send it off to the supervisor, they approve it, and then it goes off to finance. My concern, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. My concern is the fact that we're talking that supervisors aren't properly, I guess, documenting or looking over the timesheets that are there already. and why isn't that happening? I know everybody's busy, but that's part of your job as a supervisor. So I'm just concerned about that, I guess.
Yeah, I know, and I think, Ryan can speak to this in Public Works Operations side of the house. They actually have a overtime logbook where they come back in and, again, it's manual and it's on paper, and it's like, we had a water main break and I was there for 3 hours. So I know that's how they track it in Public Works Operations.
Yeah.
And, for a police example, police are currently using Planet, which is a scheduling program. And they do a very good job of trying to input, hey, this guy, someone called in sick, so we had this guy, spend extra time. And they do a very good job of trying to make sure that Planet is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, you may not have a sergeant on duty 24 hours a day. In fact, guarantee you won't.
Right.
So there's going to be times, and there has been times in the past, where someone's got overtime and payroll is looking at Planet and saying, well, no one was scheduled for overtime that day. Well, it's because it wasn't put in because payroll happened to have just closed and that was the night before and there hasn't been a sergeant to update that. So having two separate systems can be problematic. We did have, I know I will kind of speak a little bit for Sherry. We had an issue when we originally went with time off, vacation, and sick time, having people approve, going through this approval process, but still being able to manually enter it. And we had a lot of people who would do the request their time off and go, and if you do a request time off, it automatically gets entered into your timesheet. But then you would also have people who would call in sick and they would just manually enter it instead of putting in the leave request. So we ended up changing Eden so no one, not even Patty or Sherry, can manually enter sick or vacation or comp time earned. And that really has alleviated that problem because the only way to get that on the timesheet is through the request process. And I completely agree with you where you're saying, well, not sergeants, supervisors, should, that's part of supervising, right? And that's an issue that we will still need to have to deal with. This isn't going to fix that.
Okay.
But what this does is it gives a little bit more accountability and it gives us the ability then to lock down the timesheet so that you can't manually enter any of these types. You have to go through the approval process.
Okay.
As Sherry said, it is expensive.
It is, but the problem is it doesn't matter how many times you tell people, supervisors, hey, timesheets are important. You know what? Their job is more important than working on these timesheets. These timesheets fall to the last priority on their list, to be honest with you. We have problems with timesheets every time period. And just having, like Chuck said, having it all encompassed in one program would certainly be helpful. I'm not asking for this to be completely approved at this point. What I'm asking is the ability to put it in the budget for 2022, the ability for Chuck and I and Patty to then be able to have some time to research it, have the demo to make sure it's going to fit our needs, to make sure it's going to solve some of these problems that Patty and I are having with these timesheets. People are entering things. There's some really wonky things, the way that people can enter. I'm not going to get into the nuances of it, but I think having everything in one system, like Chuck said, will take care of that, as well as fix the internal control of people just entering overtime straight on their timesheet without going through a secondary approval process.
Well, let me ask a quick question. So,
absolutely.
Someone still has to approve this anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's an accountability issue. It doesn't resolve any. It doesn't take away any approval process. But why are people entering overtime? How is overtime assigned on the city? Like where I work, it's all about hours. You don't get overtime until your first 40 are done. So our guys don't clock in and clock out to overtime. They clock in and clock out to hours. If they work 45 hours, they get paid their 5 hours overtime. They don't get to tell me that they worked overtime. Yeah, that seems backwards.
Caveats in the contract.
It's different in private. Yeah, it's different in private.
It seems functional in private.
It's easier.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
So how is overtime paid? I mean, can someone have overtime before they hit their 40?
So as long as it's over, if you're over your scheduled hours. So it doesn't, so they can use sick leave to count up for those hours. They could use comp time. They could use vacation time. Whereas in private, if you take, say, if you worked 30 hours and you took 10 hours of vacation, and then you came back and you worked 5 hours, in private, they're typically not going to pay you overtime. In government, we will, because it's your total hours. So in government, we'll pay you 5 hours of overtime even though you took 10 hours of vacation. I know.
That seems wonky.
It is.
That's a con-
It seems like that needs to be the fix.
And that's very hard to get rid of
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I mean, yeah, because doesn't state law mandate anything over 40 hours? So if an officer is scheduled for 12 and works 14, he's on a shift, and so he gets 2 hours that day regardless of if he hits 40?
Yes.
Wow. So he can do. Wow. Okay. So he can do 30 of his 40, but the way his shift is, he would be able to actually make more than he would if he worked 40 straight.
Yeah, because those hours they're saying is it can be filled in with comp time, vacation time, holiday time, whatever has been in the contract that they can use. Those hours will be filled up some way in hours that they've earned, but
Right.
it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had to have worked those 40 hours in that week.
Yeah, because in our case, we don't pay until. In our case, if we work 4/10s, and if we work Tuesday through Friday because Monday's a holiday, they'll get 48 straight hours, not 40 hours and 8 overtime. But that's the way it is, and wow. Can we have a little more time to think? We might need a little more time to think about this one. The second question is, can this be covered under that Rescue Act?
No, but what we can do, like I said, I've been working on the budget amendment. It's not as bad as what I thought. I've been able to get everything in there that you guys have asked for and that you guys have already said, hey, put this in your budget amendment, and I'm over here pulling my hair out. I've been able to get it all in there. There's a little bit of about $500,000 buffer for the biennium. So this is about $40,000. If you don't mind, I would like to put this in the budget amendment. We'd bring it back to you. We're not just going to purchase it. Like I said, it'll give us some time, but it'll be in there so that we don't have to ask for another budget amendment if we decide that we want to move forward. We'll bring it back to you, and then you can decide if you think it's still something we should do or not.
But this still doesn't solve the problem of supervision accountability, right?
No, but it solves the problem for internal control. And you're right. We do need to, hold supervisors a little more accountable. But I do think we also have internal control issues by just allowing somebody to put something like that straight on their timesheet, just like you did with leave requests. They were allowed to just put a leave request on there and then delete it. And that was an internal control issue. And that one's fixed. So I'm really happy about that. But with Chuck telling me,
as a supervisor, it is easier to focus on one person's overtime request as opposed to 30 timesheets that have 40 different overtimes somewhere sprout all those individual timesheets. It's something where it's something that someone can look at directly at a given time and approve that one, move to the next, as opposed to looking at an entire 2 weeks worth of time and attendance and figuring out, now let me think back, why was this person taking overtime here? An individual request for overtime is easier, I think, as a supervisor to acknowledge than trying to get my 30 timesheets all approved because payroll is already that I'm late.
That makes sense.
that's a good point too. Yeah, that's a really good point, Chuck. Because, you're assuming people will be putting these requests in daily, then somebody will go in there and approve them as they come in. Hi, Zoe.
Okay. Tom and Terry, you guys got any thoughts on this?
Well, they can put in there. I'm just still a little confused. I'd like to see a comparison of some sort of what you're talking about and show it to me. Maybe a video or something would be nice. So if you feel it's necessary, possibility, but I'm still confused why, how much bigger does it make a difference for you, even though just you're doing your job. So, so I would agree to put in the budget amendment, and we can talk about it again later on.
When are you looking to present that budget amendment?
Budget amendment goes to Finance Committee November 9th, workshop November 16th, and final discussion and adoption November 23rd.
Okay.
But I don't have time to really even look into this software at this point. This would be a 2022 thing, probably not until at least June, after we get through the financials. So yeah, you wouldn't see this again from me until at least summer.
Okay.
And it's a 6 to 8 month implementation, so it's not a ready to go.
Fantastic.
So it may not be, Sherry may want to start in July, but it probably wouldn't actually go live until January or February of 2023.
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah, if you think you need it, then I want to help you with that. Yeah, I still have concerns like everybody about the supervisor. Like that's part of your job. So.
Well, I would like to see what you're looking at now compared to individually. That would be what I want to see.
All right. So do we have any direct?
What I'm hearing is put it in the biennial budget amendment. I guess we'll see nods on this end.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Did we lose you, Justin?
Oh, his bars are back. His bars were gone.
Oh.
Yep.
You there?
I am here, kind of.
Driving,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so if we can move on then, the next one is AB 21-135, a proposal from the administration to use a partial allocation of our American Rescue Plan Act funding. I think as you're all aware, we received just over 5.9 million in federal funding through the ARPA funds. We've received our first disbursement of funds earlier this year. It's in 2 distributions, so we got a lump sum of roughly half of that, so roughly $3 million. The next disbursement will come mid 2022, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we've been, working with the department heads, working with the rules that have been passed down to us, and identifying those projects that qualify. What we're proposing here is the use of about $400,000 of those funds for these 4 items that I'll go over. I would like to propose that so that we can include it in the biennial budget amendment for 2022. And then that would leave us roughly 5.5 million to talk about infrastructure projects and whatever other uses the council seems fit. As you can imagine, when we start looking at infrastructure projects and we're talking billions of dollars, in one fell swoop, we could use that whole 5.5 for infrastructure projects if we wanted to. But so what we prepared for you is a list of the proposals with the justification, background and detail, and then also speak to the rules that have been handed down to us from the feds as to eligible uses for these funds. So the first is COVID cleaning. I think you've seen all city emails that I've sent out to staff. We've had a number of instances where we've had COVID outbreaks. We've had to bring in ServPro to do some deep cleaning of pretty much all our facilities by now. So we would allocate $20,000 to COVID cleaning. The next one is upgrading the court and council chambers for participation of continued hybrid meetings, making them much more friendly, user-friendly, moving away from the owls. I think you probably know that Sumner recently upgraded their city council chambers. That's where we got the $250 figure from. Chuck has spoken to their IT folks down there. Feels that that's a pretty good number if we were to upgrade the council chambers in anticipation of continued hybrid meetings. I think certainly, with, having at least one and, possibly two members on the council that, travel quite frequently, we're going to continue to see the hybrid meeting type where, some people end up, remoting into meetings. And again, making it much more user friendly. I mean, as we can all see here with the OWL, or we've participated in the Blue Jean meetings, sometimes it isn't really, user friendly. So we'll be upgrading the council chambers. The HR generalist position, as you know, that's funded at 0.75 right now. We're proposing to make that full time for partial 21 and then 22 and 23. I think this is ever more so important with the departure of our HR manager and having a new HR manager come on board. There's a number of our numbers. There's numbers articulated in here about, the increased number of recruitments and the complexity of the recruitments that we've seen. And as you've heard over the past, several months, and our list of recruitments is, growing. It's not decreasing. And certainly bringing a new person on board, while an experienced HR professional, Debbie is going to need that assistance, from the generalist, to help her get her feet on the ground and figure things out. And then finally, I put in $73,000 for 20 additional laptops, and then BetMotion. That's what gives you the remote access capability to log into the system remotely. So, again, what we're asking is that for council, to approve at least a partial use, roughly $400,000 of our ARPA money, and then if council approves, we would incorporate that into the biennial budget amendment that we were just talking about, and then defer on the remaining 5.5 million, and look to possibly other uses of the funds that the council may be interested in, or infrastructure projects. I know that's of great interest of a number of council members, is where we can possibly use some of these funds for eligible water and sewer and possibly storm water.
That was my first concern. You're taking care of yourself, but you're not taking care of the citizens. When we originally talked, I had thought we're going to do with radio reader meters out there, get those taken up and going. Right now over Facebook, people are just pissed at us about the prices of their water. And you have told us, well, you can show them where it's going, we're solving the problem. Now you're going to put the problem off for 6 more months. I don't agree with this.
Okay.
And I think we should be doing some infrastructure now that we need to help the citizens and not just help us.
So you'd like us to come back with a proposal for the full use of the full 6,000?
I would. Million. Yeah. Because the laptops, why do we need that many laptops, Chuck?
Because we have almost every employee short of Public Works has some sort of function that they're trying to work remotely. So this is, we were able to purchase a number of laptops last year, or beginning of this year, I can't remember, so it rolled into one, for a lot of staff, so they are able to work remotely. They're taking their laptop, they take that work laptop home and are able to work remotely. This is going to be, basically the rest of the office staff will also have that ability. So this is taking care of people like, for example, Debbie, who still has a desktop. There's that many employees that still have desktops that have difficulty being able to work remotely in a hybrid situation where some days they're in the office and some days they're able to work remotely because they only have a desktop and they can't take that with them.
Aren't we trying to, in the long run, I know this is COVID is a real challenge, but trying to get people back into the offices and not trying to get them out of the offices?
So what we've done is through the collective bargaining agreement, in particular with AFSCME, there was an opener for teleworking option, and we've worked through that with AFSCME in the collective bargaining agreement process. What we're indicating right now, at least, is that folks, even post-pandemic, would be allowed to work up to 2 days a week remotely, depending upon their position classification.
I didn't know that.
Obviously, an officer couldn't work, or a maintenance worker fixing a water line, isn't ineligible.
It also gives the city more flexibility as to where these employees are working. So, for example, if these people need to go into the EOC or during an emergency operation, or this building has no power, right now we have to send the people home because we can't have them work anywhere else with a desktop. In the future, if everyone had a laptop, they could move to a different facility and keep on working. So, or take that laptop and continue to work in an EOC setting or some kind of a different setting. So the ability to transition from desktops to laptops is a long-term goal of mine. This would help speed up that process as well.
And I think also just in recognition of the ever-changing employment environment. one person in particular, we have a planner, Mary Reingold, that, one of her considerations of leaving was for a state job that is permanent, 100% remote, and she just has to live in the state of Washington. So, I mean, the employment environment is changing to allow for more flexibility, reduces commute times, any number of things.
The only other thing I have is Melissa. I can see going through 2023, 23, but not 2020, 2021, but not 2023. You got a new HR journalist coming in. She can help her next year, and that should be the end of it.
So I apologize, I misunderstood. You thought 21 is okay?
No, I thought it should be 2022.
Oh, okay.
Not the 2023. I don't see the need for that. If we need to, obviously come back. Right. This is the problem she's solving, but I don't think we should go for it next year.
Well, and that's the one that I agree with, just because she's been overstaffed or understaffed for several years. That I think at some point that's going to be a full-time position anyway. And if we're getting coverage on it for 3 years from it.
Well, Mike, it's kind of weird to say, okay, this is going to be a full-time position and then scale it back after a person's been in at a full-time position as well, right? That's kind of pulling the rug out.
Well, and, the thought process was that if we can use ARPA funds to backfill,
and then
these intervening years, then you're right. I mean, most likely we would come back in the 23-24 budget and request that it be full-time.
Okay.
Continue to be full-time.
Sure. Okay.
But what it sounds like is with the overtime she's probably already working, we're paying her more than full-time wage anyway.
Correct.
Probably, yeah.
No, because she's exempt, so she's not working overtime. We have her, John authorized her to work full-time, so we are having her work full-time.
Oh, okay.
Instead of 3/4 time, yeah.
Okay.
But since this is the budget goes through 2022, if you guys don't feel comfortable with some of this, another thing we could do is, since this has to come back anyways for further approval of the rest of the money, and we have to come back with another budget in the future, if we can get the stuff that's approved for 2021 and 2022, that may be another way to go.
Say that again.
So, Chuck is trying to pay for net motion for 2023 and 2024. Maybe we come back and not pay for those extra years, because I can't pay for them anyways yet, because they're not in my current budget cycle anyways. So if you don't feel comfortable with some of this stuff and you're saying you're not really wanting to spend all this money, Tom, maybe we do the stuff that fits my current budget cycle, which is 21, 22, and put that through so that we can get this on our budget amendment, and then come back and have the bigger discussion for the rest of this money when the mayor's ready to present that at the beginning of the year.
That makes sense, and we get more input from the rest of the council that way too.
So drop off the out years of 2023 and 2024.
Correct.
And again, I get wanting to upgrade the council chambers and stuff, but I mean, we have 2 people that view us remotely, so spending $250,000 so they can see us in high def, I don't know if that's really worth the people's money. And it's still the people's money. It's just everyone. It's the U.S. citizens' money, and we got to be cautious of that we use that appropriately too.
Well, do we want to leave that one off for the broader?
I would like to include a radio read meters that I talked about too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the one with the meters, I wouldn't worry too much about that quite yet, because Ryan and I have to move forward with the Neptune upgrades before we can even get to that part of it. It's not going to do us any good if we don't get the Neptune upgrade approved. So that's going forward in the budget amendment in the end of November. And if that gets approved, then staff is ready to move forward with that November 24th, which really, that's the day before Thanksgiving, I believe. So really it'll be December 1st. She has that contract available for that night to be approved. And then she'll be working with Jack and Ryan. They'll start moving forward on that. And then again, we'll be bringing the whole package back the beginning of the year, it sounds like. And that would include, I'll be a spoiler alert here, I know that John has that in there for the upgrade for the reads, the meter reads. upgrade. So we can get that included, but we really need to get the Neptune upgrade first.
Okay. First by bubble. Okay.
So am I
Yeah.
hearing drop off the
The
council
courtroom.
chambers?
Yeah.
And then we're okay with the cleaning,
Yes.
the generalist in 21,
Yes.
22, and then IT, but just not the net motion in 23 and 24.
I agree.
I think that's right, yeah.
Justin?
I agree with that, but I'm not opposed to the 23, 24. I mean, it's got to be paid for at some point anyway, and if we can, I mean, but the funds we still have through 2026, so it could be something we look at using.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Start the project by December of 2024. Then we have till
Yeah.
December.
2026 to deplete the funds, right?
Only if it's a project. So with net motion, you're going to need to spend it by 2024. But again, once we bring this back, say in January, February, whenever the mayor chooses to bring this back, you can add those once we come up with the bigger plan for all of the money. It sounds like that was kind of the greater concern is coming up with a plan so that you can show the citizens, hey, we're going to spend this money appropriately, and then add those other things in there with a little bit. I mean, it's not even 1% of the funds, right? So you can add those back in at that point.
Yeah.
So Sherry, is you're thinking that we would just put this in the biennial budget amendment?
Since it's ARPA, it has to be approved by council. So I would just update this agenda bill if finance doesn't if finance is giving the head nods to what we just mentioned, I would update it and I'll put this in the budget amendment, but move it forward through council for approval separately.
Meeting? Are we okay with moving it to the October 26th meeting?
That's fine with me.
I'm presuming finance
I'm fine.
committee
Yeah,
issues.
that's on Sherry. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were sure.
Perfect.
Thought you're talking to Sherry and Al.
Okay, so I'll put it on for finance committee issues on the 26th.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
And the whole council can discuss.
Yep.
No, when John's not looking at me, I know he's talking to me. When he's looking at me, he's not talking to me.
All right. And then we have the approval of the minutes.
We had one correction. Debbie has them.
Okay. All right. Open discussion, Mr. Watson.
I was going to ask about the general fund, but I think we're pretty well got information from Sherry already, so that was my concern where we are with that. Thank you.
All right. Terry?
Yep.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Well, then this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see everyone in 18 minutes.
Perfect.